Shocking headlines from San Diego County schools in recent weeks. In separate incidents, two middle school students were taken into custody for allegedly threatening violence, and a middle school teacher pleaded not guilty this week to a weapons charge after he allegedly carried a loaded gun and a knife to school for protection. Joining me to talk about school safety is San Diego Unified Police Chief Reuben Littlejohn and Trish Hatch, Director of the School of Counseling at San Diego State University. Chief Littlejohn, what's happening here? I know you can't talk about the specifics of these cases I just outlined, but how unusual is it for students to make threats involving weapons?
Well, the San Diego Unified School District Police Department is a fully sworn and accredited police department who investigates about 10 of these a year. They're not something that's brand new to us, but in this post-Newtown era, I think senses are heightened, and so we're waiting on bated breath really for the next incident of violence, and we're hoping it's not going to occur in our school district.
How adept is our campus police in spotting these threats?
They're very adept, and they work with school counselors and administrators on how we can address issues with kids who have a propensity for violence.
And Professor Hatch, what role do school counselors play in identifying students who have a propensity for committing violence?
And when there's a student on campus that teachers, parents, or others are concerned about, and the school counselor intervenes with that student, they'll provide one-on-one counseling. They may have them in a small group, and they'll work with the family and the teacher with that student. But there are times when the interventions that the counselors are providing just don't seem to be making a difference. And when we notice a student's behavior is outside of their normal developmental range, or they have a behavior that's just not in alignment with what's the situation at hand, then it's time for them to really seek an additional consultant to see what other types of things may be at play. So they may consult with the school psychologist, they may consult with the school social worker if they have one, maybe the school resource officer, depending on the type of behavior the student has. If it's just outside of a reasonable or appropriate reaction to a normal developmental situation, that's cause for alarm and a red flag, and for a counselor to say, we might need to take a look at what other things might be going on here.
Now, there have been cuts to school counselors.
Yes.
What effect is that going to have on school violence prevention?
It's a huge effect, because we can't do the prevention education for the students that the school counselors need. Unfortunately, they become, well, in some places, they're just putting out fires rather than really helping do the prevention services, to teach the students the knowledge, the attitudes, and the skills they need to get into the prevention piece of it first. You know, when counselors are in the classroom teaching curriculum, the students know who they are, and they create a relationship with the students. Then when there's a need for an intervention because a student might have multiple infractions of behavior and they want to help get them the skills they need, that student knows who the counselor is. But when the only time they see a counselor is when they actually end up having, a severe problem, and the counselor's not part of the whole school-wide system, well, then there isn't a way to prevent the concern. There also isn't a relationship with that student. We have 800-to-1 ratio of school counselors in the state, and there's just not enough time for counselors to do the work they need.
Chief Littlejohn, I want to talk to you about reports that have been published regarding San Diego Unified Police carrying AR-15 rifles. It's been reported that those rifles were obtained in 2010 and have been carried at least 7 times on campus. Why were they obtained, and under what circumstances are they carried?
Well, if we look at it regionally, our police academy here in San Diego County trains with both handguns and rifles in an active shooter environment. And so what we wanted to do was to be in compliance with that sort of training. In terms of how we use those when we believe there's a weapon that's involved in the situation and it might threaten students and staff, and so our officers are equipped with that for those purposes.
Professor Hatch, as you know, President Obama has proposed tighter gun restrictions. There is also a plan to stop violence on campus. How do you view that plan?
Oh, it's a vital plan. The funding that will come through here will be very important in providing the services that we need. What we need to make sure of, though, is that the funds don't become competitive between school counselors or school resource officers. We need to really look at what do all students need in schools, what ratio is appropriate to provide the comprehensive wraparound programs and services to students at a ratio that's appropriate.
And Chief Littlejohn, I want to end it with you. As you know, part of that plan includes restrictions on guns. But aren't these kids getting their guns from their parents? So what's the effect?
When we look at threat assessment, what we're looking at is a student's access or availability to weapons as well as their ability. And if you're teaching your kid how to shoot a weapon, let's make sure that that kid has the right wherewithal and the right mindset in dealing with these kinds of issues and looks at it maturely.
We've got to end it there. Chief Littlejohn, Professor Hatch, thank you for speaking to us
Thanks so
today.
much for having us.
Thank you.